A Nightmare on Elm Street, Suffered the Children, an original novel by David Bishop. Chapter 9. Alex smelled smoke when she awoke. Something was burning. No, something had burnt. The scent was stale and thin. She sniffed at her t-shirt. The smoke from the fire in Chris's bedroom was still clinging to the fabric. She peeled off the garment and threw it across the room and into the washing basket. 2 points. A quick glance beneath the dressing on her arm confirmed the cuts were healing. The bruises around her neck when Peter had tried to strangle her were just as real. She hadn't been dreaming the whole mess. It was all true. The cops had taken her and the others down to the station, careful to keep them separated. They were questioned into the early hours of the morning before being released into their parents' care. Each of the teens was given a bottle of pills called Hypnosil, purportedly for shock. When Alex protested, she had had enough of doctors and drugs for one day. The physician said this pill will suppress dreams and guarantee each of them several hours of uninterrupted sleep. That was an offer none of them felt like turning down, not after everything they'd experienced. She rolled out of bed and looked at the calendar on her wall. Saturday. I can't believe it's Saturday. Gee, maybe a trip to the mall would be nice, or maybe a malt at the diner, Alex suggested sarcastically to the reflection in her bathroom mirror. Yeah, or another trip to the deranged world of my psyche, courtesy of Krueger. Christ alone knew what her mother must be thinking about this shit. How long before Joyce was getting her measured up for a straitjacket and a rubber room to wear it in? Alex had a shower, trying to wash her fears away with the lingering smoke fumes. After drying herself, she chose a fresh pair of black combat trousers and a red t-shirt to wear over a black bra and panties, plus her favorite black combat boots. If I'm going to hell, I might as well be dressed for action, she decided, and headed downstairs for breakfast. Her mom was watching the morning news on a portable in the kitchen. She switched off the TV quickly when Alex bustled in, but not before images of the fire engines outside Chris's house had appeared on screen. "What's for breakfast?" Alex asked, keeping her voice cheerful. "I haven't made anything," Joyce admitted. "There's juice in the fridge, cereal and milk if you want it. Or we could go out for something." "Juice and cereal's fine, Mom." Alex poured herself a generous bowl, drowned it in low-fat milk, and started shoveling the mixture into her mouth. She could feel her mom's eyes watching every movement. "I think we need to talk about what happened yesterday and last night," Joyce said hesitantly. "The police are worried about you, and so am I." "Maybe I'll have some toast, too," Alex announced, fetching 2 slices from a loaf on the counter and dropping them into the toaster. "Alex, are you feeling all right?" "Better, after a good night's sleep." "I noticed you hadn't been sleeping well lately, honey." "Nightmares and shit." "The police still want an explanation for what happened." Alex retrieved her toast and smeared butter across both slices. "Well, if they figure it out, they know where to find me." "They need your help to do that." "Yeah, right." She munched into the crispy hot bread, enjoying the way the butter had melted into the surface. "I tried to tell them yesterday, and they didn't want to know. Why should I trust the cops today?" Joyce approached her daughter gingerly. "I need your help too, Alex. I want to understand what's happening to you." "When I find out, you'll be the first to know, Mom." "That's not good enough. Joyce stopped, visibly straining to control her emotions. "How can I help you if you won't tell me what's going on? Is it a boy? Are you having problems with a boy?" Alex smiled. "I wish it were that simple." "Or school? Are you being bullied? Is that why you cut class? Is that why you went to that drug trial yesterday?" Alex finished her toast, rinsed her cereal bowl under the tap, and wiped the last crumbs of breakfast from her face. "Look, Mom, I know this isn't easy for you. It isn't easy for me either. But this is something I have to do on my own." "Is it Krueger? Is he bothering you?" "I can go to the police, find out what they know about him," her mom offered. "Just stay out of it, okay?" Alex gave Joyce a quick kiss on the cheek before heading for the door. Joyce watched her daughter leave before bursting into tears. She cried in the kitchen for a while before dabbing her face dry with a paper towel. Joyce went to the hallway and dialed Springwood's local directory service. "Yes, I'm trying to find a consulting psychiatrist. Preferably one that specializes in treating teenagers? She listened for a few seconds. No specialist? How about a general psychiatrist? Joyce picked up a pen from the telephone table and found a scrap of paper to write on. Western... How are you spelling that? Oh, Weston, I see. Weston Hills. And that's the only such facility in the area? Well, thank you for the number. You've been very helpful. They had been down this road before, her and Alex. But the psychiatrist had given her daughter a clean bill of mental health a year ago. Maybe it was shifting town that had set Alex off again. Making new friends was never easy, especially at her age. Have I pushed her back into harming herself? Did I miss the signs? Joyce leaned against the wall. The burden of her emotions too much to bear. Tears ran down her face as she slid to the floor. Kat arrived at Springwood General to find Alex already waiting outside. The medical center was a sprawling 4-story structure of whitewashed concrete and green-tinted mirror glass. Not the most welcoming of buildings, but the ground spread around its perimeter had been sympathetically designed and carefully nurtured, providing a haven for patients and visitors from the tragedies inside the hospital. Kat was walking past a Japanese Zen garden when she heard a voice call out, "Kat, over here!" Alex was standing amidst the white pebbles and gray slate stepping stones, waving to her. Kat ventured into the garden. It was sheltered from the hospital by a row of fir trees, creating an oasis of calm. The two teenagers sat on a stone bench, enjoying the sun warming their faces from the blue sky, and savoring the crisp air of a spring morning. "How did you know I'd come here?" Kat asked eventually. Alex shrugged. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I felt it more than knew. The others will be here soon." "When I woke up, something urged me to come here this morning," Kat frowned. "Was that you?" "I thought it would be a good idea if we all got together, talked about what's happened to us, and what's going to happen." "But how did you—" "I wish I could explain it," Alex replied. "At least in a way that would make sense to the cops, to my mom, to the head shrinker she's probably calling right now. That serum we were given yesterday, I think it changed us. We're altered, different. Maybe the drug woke something up, some latent ability within each of us. I can sense what people are feeling, and I can influence those feelings a little." "What next? Spoon bending and shit?" "I have a feeling that's going to be Peter's gift, moving things with his mind." Kat wasn't sure what to make of this. She noticed Alex smiling. "What's so funny?" "You don't believe me." "Can you blame me?" "Not really," Alex agreed, "but it's hard to deny some pretty weird shit had been happening to us since we got injected with that serum." "Ain't that the fucking truth?" Kat looked at the Zen garden, studying the swirls and patterns in the white pebbles. "What about me? What's my thing?" Alex shrugged. "You'll know that better than me. Last night, when we were all having nightmares, each of us got a glimpse of what we can do. What did you see when you fell asleep?" "The TV switched itself on in my room," Kat replied with a grin. "I don't think you've become a human remote control, Kat." "Yeah, but wouldn't that make life easier?" Kat said with a smile before thinking back to her nightmare again. She told Alex what had happened, moment by moment. "The tattoos on my skin, they were trying to kill me. Then you came in and woke me up just in time." Alex rose from the bench and walked into the garden, crouching on one of the stepping stones so she could run her hands through the tiny pebbles. "When the nightmare started, you were watching yourself on TV?" "While the tattoos were coming to life, yeah." "Then you were floating above your body, watching it being throttled." "At first it was the snakes from my nightmare, then it was just me dying." Alex stopped moving her hand. "Each time you were watching, seeing things, visions, things that were going to happen, or that did happen." "But you stopped it when you woke me up," Kat pointed out. "Only because Krueger sent me to save you." Alex stood up. "You saw your own death. That must be your ability, seeing the future. Precognition." "What, like a fortune teller at the carnival?" Kat snorted in disbelief. "Next you'll be saying I should buy a crystal ball or play solitaire with tarot cards. I might look like the Queen of Goth, but I can't stand all that shit." "Fuck!" Alex was staring at the pattern she had made in the white sand. "What is it? What's wrong?" Kat asked, before her gaze dropped down to the ground. Written in the sand were 2 words. "You're mine." "Oh, shit." "A message from Krueger," Alex said angrily. "The bastard is using us." "Bastard is right," another voice interjected. Peter was standing at the entrance to the garden. Behind him, Chris and Heather could be seen walking towards them, too. "Fred Krueger was the bastard son of 100 maniacs. You won't believe some of the twisted shit this guy has pulled." Peter had spent the morning researching their tormentor. Once all 5 were gathered outside the hospital, he told them what he had uncovered as they strolled through the grounds. "My dad's still got my computer locked away in the garage, so I thought I'd try Springwood Library. The computer there was on the blitz, so I resorted to some old-fashioned research methods and hit the stacks," he explained. "And?" Heather asked. "Nothing. Not one mention of Krueger anywhere. Not in the county records, not in the register of births or deaths, and nothing in the newspaper archives. But I did find gaps where he should have been." "What do you mean?" "Pages missing from bound volumes. Sections on microfiles blacked out. Whole editions of court records missing. It was as if somebody had been systematically trying to delete every reference to the name Fred Krueger and succeeding." Chris shook his head. "Peter, you've got conspiracy theories on the brain." "I wish you were right," Peter insisted. "So get this. Springwood might be able to censor anything and everything about Krueger here, but the town can't censor the internet. That's a worldwide resource. Individual rantings and online diaries, you can never destroy those completely. Even if the original web pages were taken down, search engines maintain catch files of past hits. So I went to the net cafe at the mall and did some digging." He reached into a duffel bag and produced pages of printouts, giving a set to each of the others. "This is what I copied before the cafe owner saw it and threw me out." The first few pages were extracts from an online journal kept by a girl who called herself Lori. She had lived in Springwood and mentioned having had dreams and nightmares about a monster with knives for fingers. The final excerpt gave the creature a name, Krueger. "He killed Trey. I think he killed Blake as well, and Blake's dad. He wants me. He wants to do things to me. I'm scared, so scared. I wish Will was here. He would hold me and say everything was going to be okay. I'm not sure I can ever go home again." Pictured beside the entry was a low-res image of Lori's home. The exterior was painted in different colors from how it looked now, but the building was still unmistakable, as was the number on the front door, 1428. "Jesus, she lived in my house?" Alex gasped. Peter remained grim-faced. "Keep reading, there's more." Alex turned to the final page, a copy of the summary from a psychiatric assessment written nearly 20 years earlier. "Where did you find this?" "Somebody uploaded their thesis onto the web. It's a study of Ohio psychiatric treatment methods in the mid-1980s. This page was among the appendices." Alex began reading the summary. It did not name the patient, but the details of their alleged delusion had a familiar element. Subject claims she is being stalked in her dreams by a creature called Krueger, who attacks people in their nightmares. Subject believes as she dies in her dreams she will never wake up. Strength of delusion is remarkable, as is the depth of its invention. Krueger is supposedly a child molester and murderer who returns from beyond the grave seeking revenge. Subject claims Krueger was the son of a nun raped repeatedly by 100 psychiatric patients at a local asylum after the war. Subject displays classic signs of insomnia-related psychosis. Strong sedatives have been prescribed in the hope of easing her symptoms. There was a handwritten addendum visible at the foot of the summary. Subject deceased, found dead in padded cell as a result of severe blood loss. Subject had apparently bitten through her own wrist and used the blood from the wounds to write a nursery rhyme on the walls. It read, 1-2, Freddy's coming for you. 3-4, better lock your door. 5-6, grab a crucifix. Blood supply ran out before subject could complete the rhyme. A regrettable lapse by night shift. New precautions to be instituted to prevent reoccurrence. Case closed and sealed at request of the director. Alex shivered when she reached the section about the nursery rhyme. as if someone was walking over her grave. The verse was the same one she'd written while having a daydream in class on Thursday. Peter waited until everyone had finished reading before speaking again. So I guess we know what we're up against. Why did he choose us? Heather asked, a hysterical edge to her voice. I don't want to end up like this girl, locked up in a rubber room waiting for Krueger to finish me off. She burst into tears. Chris gave her a hug, one hand stroking Heather's blonde hair, trying to comfort her. He picked me first, Alex said. He was in my nightmare before we went to the Kacha Institute. It must be the house. Something about my house that attracts him, that lets him get inside our minds. What about the serum? Kat wondered. None of us have been in your house yet, and we saw Krueger in our dreams after they injected us with the serum. Lloyd had been injected with the drug before, Peter recalled. He talked the rest of us into going for the trial. The two things must be linked. We need to know more about the serum, Alex decided. Maybe there's an antidote or some way of reversing its effects. Morpheus Pharmaceuticals is gone, Chris announced. I went to the Kacha Institute first thing this morning. Carrie and Dower, they flew back east last night. Morpheus was only renting space at the Institute for the length of the trials, no more. I tried calling their office in New York, but the number is out of service. Get this, both doctors have unlisted home phone numbers. It'll take days before we can track them down, if we ever do. Heather wiped away her tears. What about Lloyd's friend, Luke? He's local. Maybe he can help us. Luke is dead, Kat replied. I saw it on the news this morning. Local man dies in tragic car crash. The cops think he fell asleep at the wheel. It happened when we were all having our nightmares. That could be a coincidence, though. Or not. Peter rubbed his forehead. Shit, we're on our own with this. The cops don't want to hear the name Krueger, man. Our parents think we're going psycho, and nobody else is going to believe a word we say. We're fucked. Maybe not, Alex said. She told them what she had told Kat, her theory about the serum and its effects. Chris shook his head. You expect us to believe that shit? He asked, laughing bitterly. Just because you're afraid, don't take it out on Alex, Kat snapped. If I told you about Krueger 3 days ago, would you have believed me? No, but nothing. Give her a chance, okay? Chris glared at Kat, but eventually relented. Okay. Alex sighed. Look, I'm not claiming I know all the answers or why this is happening to us, or even how, but I sense something has changed, has been, I don't know, awakened inside of us. Chris rolled his eyes. Yeah, like what? Alex stepped in front of Chris, confronting him. That fire in your bedroom last night, how did it start? I don't know. I caught fire in my nightmare. But you didn't burn, did you? I don't see what... Your bedroom got burnt to, Chris, but you didn't get so much as a heat rash, did you? Alex demanded, her eyes staring at Chris. No, he said, unable to hold her gaze. I didn't. What about me? Heather asked. I don't feel any different. Peter had an answer for that. When we were in my bedroom, you said you could hear my thoughts from 5 blocks away. I was screaming in your head. Heather winced. Don't remind me, I've still got the headache. You have some sort of psychic ability, Peter said. You can hear what other people are thinking, and maybe even communicate to them with your mind. He's right, Alex realized. Can you do it now, Heather? No, thank God, she replied. It must only happen when one of us is dreaming. Just as well. I think the voices would drive me mad otherwise. I've heard a few whispers this morning, but I can block those out, I guess. I suppose you've got a theory to explain that, too? Chris asked Alex. Kat stepped between the two of them, pushing Chris backwards. Leave her alone, asshole. She's only trying to make sense out of all this. You might be king of the basketball court, but you're shit scared like the rest of us. Stop taking it out on Alex, or else. Or else what? He snarled, squaring up to Kat. Stop it, both of you, Alex shouted. This is what Krueger wants. Don't you understand? He wants us fighting each other, divided, tearing ourselves apart. That's how he wins. Heather stepped in and pulled Chris to one side, while Peter persuaded Kat to back down. Alex waited while tempers cooled a little, using the time to recall something from her dream journey into the boiler room. Last night, Krueger claimed he owned us, said we were his possessions, she said. He called us his playthings, his disciples. The dreams we all had, they were a game, a test. I think that bastard's got plans for us. These new abilities of ours, they're part of his plan. How can you know all this? Chris demanded. I don't. I'm guessing, she snapped back at him. If you've got any better suggestions, spit them out. Chris shook his head. Forget it. I've listened to enough of this shit for one day. I'm out of here. Heather, you coming? She nodded, smiling apologetically to Alex. Heather took Chris's hand and they walked away from the others. Peter watched the pair leaving. I'll go after them, he told Kat and Alex, and see if I can talk any sense into Chris. Like you said, he's scared. If I can get to him and get him to think about it again, Heather probably will too. Whatever, Alex said, shaking her head. Peter ran off, leaving Kat and Alex outside the hospital. Sorry I shouted earlier, Kat said. Probably didn't help matters. Alex shrugged. We've got to stick together. It's our only chance against Krueger. I can feel it in my bones. Kat gestured towards the hospital. Since we're here, you want to go in and see how Lloyd is doing? Hospitals creep the shit out of me. Just the smell of antiseptic. Alex folded her arms together, hugging herself. Kat recognized the body language. How long did they keep you in? Alex's brow furrowed. How did you... The cuts on your arms, remember? I spent 3 weeks in Weston Hills after my parents caught me putting out the cigarette butts on myself. A month. I spent a month in a psychiatric hospital right before my 15th birthday. Alex shuddered at the memory and then folded the pages Peter had brought and stuffed them into a pocket. Come on, let's just go see Lloyd. Kat led the way through the gardens towards the hospital. If he's still in a coma, at least he wouldn't be feeling any pain, she said hopefully. I wouldn't count on that, Alex muttered. It was Heather's idea to go to the mall. After the last few days, some retail therapy and a trip to the movies sounded like heaven next to nightmares and finger knives. Chris eventually agreed, and Peter tagged along, saying he didn't want to be left behind. Heather hit the makeup counter while the two boys checked out some running shoes and Foot Locker. Chris went straight for the basketball section, admiring a pair of black and white Converse All-Stars. Now this is old school, he said appreciatively. Can you believe professionals used to play in these? Peter was more interested in 4 teenagers causing trouble at one of the checkouts. One guy had 2 black eyes and a bandage across his nose. Look, Johnston's been let out of his cage for the day, and he's brought his goon squad with him to the mall. Chris shook his head dismissively. Somebody should teach those asses some manners. Good idea. He left Chris and moved closer to the checkout to observe Johnston. The blonde bully was hitting on a teenage girl, trying to peer down the inside of her uniform, one of his hands snaking around her hips. The rest of the gang were goading him on, all the while blocking what was happening from the other staff in the store. Leave me alone, the girl protested. Why should I? Johnston smirked, one of his hands cupping her left breast as he read the name tag on her uniform. Who's going to stop me, Christina? Peter remembered Alex's suggestion about the serum giving him the ability to move objects with his mind. She seemed to believe that would be the strongest during dreaming, but maybe it could still work while he was awake. I don't know if I believe her, he thought, but this is a good chance to try it. In his nightmare, he had reached out with his mind and pushed. Peter focused his gaze on the electronic till beside Johnston. The bully's hand was lingering in front of the drawer, clinging to Christina's side. Peter concentrated all his thoughts on the checkout and shoved. The drawer suddenly flew outward, slamming into Johnston's hand and crushing his fingers. Oh, fuck my hand! Johnston shouted, tearing the damaged digits away from Christina. She was as shocked as him, jumping away from the till. You did that deliberately! Johnston snarled at her. She shook her head, unable to explain what had happened. Peter noticed a stack of tubes stuffed with tennis balls to one side of the counter. Imagine if those burst open, he thought to himself. It would be like cannon fire inside the store. He smiled and gave the tubes a push. Within moments, the meatheads were bombarded by flying tennis balls, guided missiles thudding into their faces and groins. Johnston's goons decided to retreat and stumbled from the store. 2 of them upended on their way out by a collection of baseball bats spilling beneath their feet. Only Johnston remained behind, glaring around the store trying to find the cause of his embarrassment. "Who's doing this? Who's the little shit that thinks they can take me on?" he shouted. "I'll show them who's boss." Peter couldn't resist a final swipe at Johnston's dignity. As the burly bully stormed from the store, he failed to notice the tennis racket grasped by a mannequin near the doors. One last nudge, and the racket swung sideways, the edge of its frame smacking into Johnston's already broken nose. Blood gushed from both nostrils, soaking the front of his clean white t-shirt. Feline was the coolest store at the mall, a high-fashion boutique with the most cutting-edge clothing in Springwood. That probably wasn't saying much, though, Heather thought to herself, but only the trendiest students stopped there. She had ventured inside and found the perfect top, a daring sheath of fabric with 2 ties threaded up either side of the garment. If you tugged on them, it would tighten the material to a perfect fit, clinging in all the right places. The price was exorbitant, but her mom had given Heather a charge card last birthday, and this was the perfect chance to abuse it. She chose a black version of the top and headed for the changing rooms, selecting a cubicle near the door. Once inside, Heather slipped out of her cropped t-shirt and into the top. The tailoring was exquisite for something off the rack. She had to have it. Heather reluctantly took it off and was pulling her own t-shirt back on when 3 giggling voices entered the changing area. "Did you hear about little Miss Sutherland? The principal's favorite princess is getting suspended for cutting classes yesterday. The bitch will never be crowned prom queen after pulling a stunt like that. I can't wait to see her face on Monday when she hears the news." Heather opened the cubicle door a fraction and peered out. 3 girls from her class had come in, all carrying versions of the same top she had chosen. Leader of the pack was Simone Myers, the bitchiest student at school and Heather's main competition for the title of prom queen. Simone laughed, and her acolytes dutifully giggled along with her. Drones, Heather thought sourly. Hyenas like Simone always hunt in packs. Heather had seen that on the Discovery Channel once. And what kind of name was Simone anyways? In Ohio? Give me a break. Gossip in the hallway suggested her real first name was Mildred, but she changed it before transferring to Springwood High last year. Simone stepped into the cubicle next to Heather and took off her shirt. "Sutherland didn't stand a chance against me in the voting anyway. And did you see what she's been wearing this week?" The other 2 giggled their agreement. "And I think she's putting on weight, too," Simone sneered. "Next thing you know, she'll be pregnant. I've always said that girl was only 1 generation from poor white trash. I mean," she paused for effect, "just look at her mother." Heather could feel her blood pressure rising. God, I'd love to tell Simone what I really think of her. "You stuck-up, self-important, delusional hag." "What did you 2 call me?" Simone demanded. "We didn't say anything," they protested meekly. "I heard somebody just call me a stuck—" Simone's voice trailed off. "Never mind. Must have imagined it." Heather clamped a hand over her own mouth to stop from laughing out loud. Simone had heard what she was thinking. But that was impossible, wasn't it? Unless Alex was right. There was only one way to find out. Simone's braying voice was talking again. "What was I saying? Oh, yes. You were talking out of your ass as usual, bitch." "That's it!" Simone ripped open the door of her cubicle. "Who is it? Who's out here saying things about me?" "What things? What are you talking about?" her friends asked warily. "I heard someone say I was talking out of my—" "Well, anyway, it was abusive," Simone flustered. "You 2 didn't hear anyone else's voice?" "No, Simone," the girls replied. "They're too scared to say how ugly you look in that skirt." "There it is again!" "They think you look like a pig in heat, and they're right." "Stop it! Get out of my head!" "One more thing. It's time to get that mustache of yours taken care of. You look more like a male gym teacher than a prom queen." Simone stormed out of the changing rooms, followed by her 2 cronies. Heather held back her laughter until she was alone, then burst into hysterics. It took Alex and Kat more than an hour to discover where the hospital was keeping Lloyd. After a long, bitter argument with the staff at the ICU, Alex and Kat eventually found out he had been transferred to the burns unit. The 2 women navigated the hospital's bewildering internal layout to the appropriate quarter. Hidden away in an annex at the rear of the building, as they neared the double doors leading into it, Kat started to shiver uncontrollably. "What is it?" Alex asked. "What's wrong?" Can you see it?" Kat gasped, her trembling hands clasped together. One finger pointed at the entrance. Alex examined the double doors but could see nothing wrong. The frames were made of wood, each inset with glass panels reinforced by an embedded wire mesh. A keypad beneath the doors controlled entry to the unit, with a call button and intercom above that. Beyond the entrance was a long, narrow corridor, with doors leading off on either side. The sour bite of antiseptic filled the air, but Alex was getting used to that. "See what?" she asked. "I don't understand." "He's in there," Kat hissed. "Krueger is in there." Chapter 10. To Kat, Krueger's presence was obvious. Looking at the annex was like staring at a building constructed entirely from pieces of their tormentor. To her eyes, the door handles were like a pair of clasping talons, twisted finger knives curled into balls of metal. The linoleum floor was a succession of dirty red and green stripes stretching along the corridor. The glass panels in the doors were his eyes, staring, searching, and probing for a glimpse of his next victim. And the walls, they were his ribcage, home to a malevolent heart, tendrils of evil creeping out to touch, to corrupt, to infest. Krueger wasn't inside the Burns unit. He was the Burns unit. Kat tried to explain all of this to Alex, but she could tell her friend was having problems grasping what she was saying. "Please, I just can't go in there," Kat said. "Don't make me go in there. I can't face it. I can't face him." Alex nodded. "Why don't you wait out here? I'll go in and see how Lloyd is doing. If you feel any better, come inside and join me." Kat knew that wouldn't happen, but she appreciated the offer. "Be careful in there," she warned. "Everything is not what it seems here." Alex led her to a bench of wood and metal opposite the entrance. Kat sat down inside. Already, Krueger's image was fading, the threat of his presence diminishing. "I'll be as quick as I can," Alex said. Kat nodded and leaned back against the wall, exhausted by what she had seen. Alex pushed the call button by the double doors. An orderly with a kindly face appeared. He had gray hair and a stomach that gently bulged over his hospital-issue pants. When he activated the intercom, Alex asked if Lloyd Reeves was a patient inside. The orderly opened the door and smiled at her. "Come on in. Lloyd hasn't had any visitors yet. Maybe you can help." The sound of a familiar voice sometimes nudges patients out of a coma. "Thanks," Alex said, surprised to be welcome for once. "We've been getting the runaround everywhere else in the hospital today." "I'll bet," the orderly said, offering to shake her hand. He held a wickedly long pair of scissors in his other hand, along with a folded sheet of newspaper cut into the shape of a snowflake. "I'm Roy. Sorry you caught me making decorations for a birthday party for one of our younger patients. Ignore all the security. It got put in as a safety measure after a baby was snatched from maternity last year. Like anyone's going to steal a patient from the Burns unit." He chuckled before noticing Kat on the bench nearby. "Does your friend not want to come in?" Kat smiled and shook her head. "No thanks. I'm a bit squeamish." "We get that a lot," Roy said. "Well, let's go see Lloyd." The pair walked away along the corridor. Kat watched them go, suppressing a yawn. The atmosphere inside the hospital was stifling. Right now, I could do with a cigarette, Kat thought to herself. The familiar, insistent craving for nicotine was crawling across her skin like an insect, a cockroach, scrabbling for a foothold on her resolve. But the hospital operated a strict no-smoking policy. Shame. I could have kept myself awake by putting cigarettes out of my skin. Chris, Heather, and Pete were sitting in a deserted movie theater at the mall's multiplex. All the hit movies had sold out, so they were stuck watching a subtitled French film about degradation during the German occupation of Paris. A searing indictment of man's inhumanity to man, filled with unforgettable imagery and highly moving performances. That was what had been written on the poster outside the box office. An ass-numbing pile of pretentious arty crap was Chris's less forgiving assessment. Not for the first time did Chris suggest that they sneak into the next screen, but Heather refused to listen. The audience in the adjoining cinema could be heard cheering and whooping through the wall. By comparison, the three of them were the only ones watching a bunch of beret-wearing depressives worry about where their next baguette was coming from. Chris couldn't remember when he'd been so bored. Even double-period English with Mr. Mycroft after lunch on a Wednesday was better than this torture. Chris dug his hand into the bucket of popcorn they were sharing, but it was empty. Screw this, he decided. I'm going to go get an ice cream. Does anybody else want something? The other two waved him away, so Chris stomped out of the screening room and along to the candy counter. He studied the 33 flavors of ice cream on offer. Where did they come up with these names? Candy Apple Gray, Cupid and Psyche, Blood and Thunder. I mean, who wants to eat a scoop of blood and fucking thunder? Gross. And an attendant in a red and green striped apron was behind the freezer, adjusting the thermostat. Hey, can I get some service here? Chris asked. The attendant stood up and smiled. It was Lloyd. His skinless face glistened beneath the harsh overhead lighting. Hey, dude, how can I help you? A single drip of thick, congealing blood hung from the tip of his bony nose. Lloyd absent-mindedly scratched at the muscles visible on one side of his face, his fingers gouging at the tissue. We've got all the usual flavors today, plus a few surprises. Lloyd, what are you doing here? Got a Saturday job, man. Hospital bills don't pay themselves, you know. Lloyd sniffed, and the drop of blood fell from his nose into the cherry Pelé tub. Yeah, but you shouldn't be out of bed. I mean, look at your face. Lloyd sighed. Has it fallen off again? Fuck's sakes, man. Lloyd searched the tubs of ice cream, retrieving a bloody flap of skin from Mocha Chocoholica and pressing it back onto his skull. Now what can I tempt you with, dude? Chris backed away from the display. I've kinda gone off ice cream. Coach says I should stay away from junk food. Don't be worried about your diet, man. You're in a dream. Calories don't count here. It's all good. Know what I'm saying? Lloyd smiled broadly as his face began peeling off once more. Duh, here we go again. Roy led Alex to the last room in the burns unit, pausing outside the wooden door. We're full up otherwise. We don't normally use this room, he confided. Why not? Most families refuse to have their loved ones stay in here. A child murderer once spent his last hours in this room. He'd been burned alive. God knows how he didn't die in that fire. The bastard clung to life for 3 days and nights before the doctors finally pulled the plug. Roy grimaced. Sorry, I know I shouldn't talk like that about a patient, but the thing is, this guy, the things he had done, like I said, most people refuse to even come inside this room. That must have been what Kat saw, Alex mused aloud. Krueger. That was his name, Roy confirmed. Krueger. Most people don't remember anymore. Just the stories about him are remembered. Why? Do you? It was my first day as an orderly at the hospital. I was only 17. You never forget your first burn victim. It's not the sight so much as the smell. Krueger must have left a tiny fragment of his black soul in this place, Alex decided. Impregnated it with his evil, and that's what freaked out Kat. Roy cleared his throat to get her attention, his hand resting on the door handle to the room. I should warn you, Lloyd does not look his best at the moment. That's okay, she said. I was there when he, you know. Right, well, in you go. Roy pushed the door open. I'll be in my office if you need me. Just hit the big red call button over the bed. Thanks. Alex stepped inside and let the door close behind her. Lloyd's room was small and square. A single chair in the bed, its only furniture. The walls were bare but for the call button and a large picture window looking over the grounds outside. Life support machines clustered around Lloyd, monitoring his condition via numerous tubes and wires attached to his body. Alex walked around the bed and sat in the lone chair beneath the window. Lloyd's head was swathed in bandages and tubes. The tubes emerged from his nostrils and his mouth. His pale, emaciated body was clad in a white hospital gown, the limbs constantly twitching and shaking. His fingers clenched and unclenched, hands jumping from the sheets before relaxing again. Restraining straps had been secured across Lloyd's chest to prevent him moving any further. His whole body was tensed, as if preparing to fight or flee. An intravenous drip pierced one arm, providing sustenance, while a tube emerged from beneath the sheets, draining other fluids away. He looked helpless and alone. Why do this to him, Krueger? Alex whispered. What harm has he ever done to you? She reached for Lloyd's hand and held it in her own, trying to soothe away the spasms and twitching. As Alex stroked the back of his hand, she felt herself being drawn towards him, not her body, but her spirit. She tensed, ready to fight back. "Help me," a voice whispered in her mind. "Please help me." "Lloyd, is that you? Please." "All right." Alex closed her eyes and lowered her defenses, letting herself be drawn closer to the voice, letting herself become one with it. When she opened her eyes again, Alex was back at the Katja Institute, in the room where they had been injected with the serum, lying on the same bed as she had before. She sat up and looked around. Lloyd was the only other person in the room, swinging his legs back and forth over the side of his bed like a small boy. His face was normal, his clothes the usual shambling, crumpled mess. "Hey, I thought you'd never get here." Alex left her bed and walked over to him. "You feeling better?" "Here, I'm fine," he said, tapping a finger against his forehead. "But this is all in here. Out in the real world, I ain't looking so hot." "Yeah, why'd you bring me here?" "I didn't," Lloyd replied sadly. "He did." "Hello, Alex. A pleasure to see you again." "Krueger," she spat, spinning around to face the murderer. He was smirking at her, his face a leering smile of evil. "What do you want from me? From us?" "That would be telling. You'll find out soon enough." "I've had enough of your fucking mind games, asshole. I want to know." "You want?" The amusement drained from Krueger's features. He strode towards her, his good hand grabbing the front of her t-shirt, while the blades on his other hand drew back ready to kill. "I don't give a shit about what you want." "You gonna kill me?" Alex shouted back. "Then go ahead, kill me. Don't leave me in suspense, cocksucker. Let's get this over with." Krueger's gloved hand twitched, then relaxed, dropping to his side. "Not yet. You belong to me, bitch. I choose when you die and how you die. The same goes for all your little friends." "You don't scare me," Alex snarled. "I know who you are. You couldn't get your kicks like a real man. You had to go after fucking children. You make me sick, you twisted fuck. You're nothing. You're shit." She spit in his face. He sniggered in response. "I've heard those words before. They don't have any power here. This is my domain." The scar-faced monster stuck out his tongue and licked the spittle from his face, swallowing it. Juicy. What about you, Alex? You proved you can spit. But do you like to swallow?" "Fuck you," she screamed at Krueger. He snapped his glove hand up to her face, pressing the edge of a blade close to Alex's left eye. She gasped, unable to suppress her terror. "I thought I couldn't scare you." Alex twisted sideways to look for Lloyd, but he was walking out of the room. "Don't leave me here." "Sorry, but I've got my own battles to fight," he said. "Catch you later, dude." Kat yawned and shook her head. This was the last place in the world she wanted to fall asleep. She got up and approached the burn unit's double doors. The presence of Krueger had been a specter before, a ghost touching every part of this place. But now he was gone, and she could no longer sense him nearby. Kat pressed the call button, and Roy came back to the doors, opening them for her. "Changed your mind, hun?" Kat nodded. "Alex can do with my support, I guess." "Good for you. It's the last door on the left." "Thanks." Kat strode along the corridor, pausing to glance inside the rooms on either side. The patients were a mixture of adults and children, each with bandages and gauze covering the injured areas of their bodies. Nothing here was pretty, but that was the nature of a burn unit. It was about getting better. She reached the last door on the left and knocked quietly. "Alex, you in there?" No reply came, so Kat opened the door and looked inside. There were two figures by the bed, each holding one of Lloyd's hands. Alex was sitting in a chair on the far side of the room, her eyes closed, head nodding forward slightly, as though she were dozing off. The other figure stood opposite Alex, a shadowy blur surrounded by darkness. Kat frowned. "What the fuck?" "Alex is sitting there in broad daylight, and this other person is..." She gasped as the shadowy figure drew back its spare hand. a pair of scissors clutched in the fist, ready to stab down into Lloyd's chest. "No, don't!" Kat screamed, throwing herself at the figure, but her arms passed through the shadow, never touching it. The scissors plunged down and buried themselves in Lloyd's flesh. He cried out in agony, fingers clawing at the wound before sinking back on the mattress, his eyes glassy and lifeless. Kat blinked and the attacker was gone, as if erased from the moment. She returned to the door and shouted for Roy. Behind her, the shadowy blur shimmered back into existence, standing over Lloyd's body. Kat watched as it reached for his hand and clasped it. The attacker's other hand pulled back, again clutching the scissors, then stabbed them into Lloyd's chest. Once he had finished twitching, the figure faded away. "Roy!" Kat called. "Roy, get in here! I need you to see this!" The bedside scene played itself out over and over again. The same movements, the same mixture of tenderness and brutality, the same horrific result. Kat peered at the blurred figure of Lloyd's killer, but could not make out any details, just the scissors, the hands, the violence. She knew there was something familiar about them, but what was it? Kat leaned out the doorway again. "Roy, where the fuck are you?" "Roy's busy," Krueger whispered in Kat's ear. "Will I do?" He gestured at the sequence replaying itself by the bed. "Friends of yours?" "Fuck you, Krueger," Kat yelled, trying to push past him. The gloved hand grabbed her arm, fingerknives closing around her wrist, slicing into the skin. Kat cried out in pain, dropping to her knees before him. "Show me a little respect, bitch!" Krueger twisted his blade sideways, gouging into the bone of her wrist. "Because I own all of you. Do as I say, and I promise you pain everlasting. If you don't do what I say." He reversed the angle of his fingerknives, scraping back, then across her bones. Blood was pouring from Kat's wounds, running down her arm to the floor. "This isn't real," she told herself. "It's only a nightmare. This isn't real." Krueger crouched beside her and chuckled. "Try telling that to Lloyd." He released Kat's arm and strode across to Alex. She was still in the chair, seemingly oblivious to what was happening around her. Krueger touched her face with his good hand, stroking the features almost tenderly. He looked at Kat and smiled. "This little bitch is my favorite." His hand ventured down from Alex's face, sliding inside her t-shirt. "Tell Kat how much you want me," he whispered in Alex's ear. She began to moan softly. "Yes," Alex breathed, biting on her bottom lip, another moan of pleasure escaping from her as Krueger caressed her. Yes." "Leave her alone," Kat shouted at Krueger. Grasping the end of the bed, she pulled herself to her feet, the mutilated arm hanging uselessly at her side, blood still running from the wounds. "If you want to hurt somebody, just hurt me." Krueger laughed at that. "All in good time." Chris was shaken awake by Peter and Heather, their faces full of fear. "Come on, snap out of it before you torch this place," Peter shouted. "What are you talking about?" Chris said. "I must have dozed off." His words failed as he looked around the theater. The seats immediately around him were on fire. "What the fuck happened?" "You did," Heather replied. "You fell asleep during the movie. I didn't realize what was happening until the corn started popping." "What?" "All the unpopped corn on the floor," Peter explained. "The temperature in here kept rising, and they started exploding. You boiled my milkshake, and then the seats caught fire." "That's when we realized it was you," Heather added. "Alex was right. You must have been dreaming." "I was," Chris remembered. "Lloyd was serving ice cream, and his face kept falling off." The fires on the seats had gone out, but their smoke was rising towards the ceiling. "Shit! We better get out of here. I'm in enough trouble as it is with my old man. I don't need..." A fire alarm went off and the sprinkler system came to life, pumping gallons of water into the screening room. The trio scrambled for the exit, the indoor rainstorm soaking them to the skin. They emerged to find hundreds of other patrons doing the same thing, pouring out of the other screens, all of them wringing wet and bewildered. Peter grabbed hold of Chris and Heather. "Let's get out of here before someone starts asking questions that we don't want to have to answer." "Good idea," Chris agreed. "Where?" "My place," Heather volunteered. Mom is playing bridge and downing gin with my aunt tonight. She gets wrecked most Saturdays and has to spend the night there. Sounds good to me, Chris said. I'm in no rush to get to my house. Me neither, Peter added. My dad's spoiling for another fight, and I don't want to give him the satisfaction. The trio crossed the parking lot, the well of approaching sirens hastening their progress. Alex opened her eyes to see Kat standing over the hospital bed, a pair of scissors clutched in her hand, ready to stab down into Lloyd's chest. Kat, no, don't do it, Alex shouted. The other girl stopped, blinking her eyes as if waking from a dream. Alex hurried to where Kat was poised, gently taking the scissors from her grasp. What happened? Kat asked, her voice heavy and tired. You must have been sleepwalking. I thought you were going to stab Lloyd with these. Alex showed her the scissors. No, it wasn't me. I saw somebody doing that over and over, but it wasn't me. Somebody else kills Lloyd. What are you talking about? Kat blinked once more, her eyes becoming clearer. I had another vision, a glimpse of the future. Somebody is going to murder Lloyd. He gets stabbed in the chest, in this room, in this bed. When? I don't know. An hour? A day? A week? I know it's dark. I know it's dark when it happens. The killer uses something with long blades. Like these scissors, or was it Krueger's finger knives? Kat frowned. I'm not sure, but Krueger isn't the killer. I know that. Then who? It's one of us, the 5 of us. One of us murders Lloyd. But why? Alex demanded. Why would any of us do that? To save themselves, Kat suggested. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Krueger forces them to do it, or tricks them into killing Lloyd. I don't know. Alex shook her head, still unable to accept the prophecy. Maybe you saw a dream. Kat shook her head. It was real, all right, but I couldn't see who the killer was. Her eyelids fluttered and she swayed on her feet. I don't feel well. Kat looked at her right arm. The skin was split open and blood was gushing from the wound, spattering her top and the clean white bedding. Kat collapsed in Alex's arms, sliding to the floor, blood still spraying from her arm. Help! Alex shouted. We need a doctor! Help! Kat's eyes rolled back in her head, and her body went limp in Alex's arms. Hold on, Kat. Help is coming. Just try to hold on. Alex opened her eyes again, this time jolting awake. She glanced hurriedly around the room, but there was no sign of Kat or blood or scissors. It had been another daydream, another fucking nightmare within a nightmare, another one of Krueger's teases. Alex could sense that Kat was in danger. She must have fallen asleep too. I've got to wake her. Alex ran for the door, but it would not open. Going somewhere? Krueger asked. His face appeared on the displays of all the life support machines surrounding Lloyd. And I was so looking forward to getting to know you better. Fuck you, let me out of here. Kat needs me. Krueger shrugged. Why should I care about that whore? I care about her, isn't that enough? No, but I will make her death all the more painful just for you, and all the more delicious for me. Krueger smirked. You better hurry if you want to save the slut. His face faded away and the door unlocked itself. Alex wrenched it open and sprinted along the corridor to the entrance. As she ran, Alex could see Kat outside the double doors, lying sideways on the bench, blood dripping from wounds on her right arm. Alex tugged on the doors, but they wouldn't move. Roy! She shouted. Roy, I need these doors open now! The overweight orderly looked out from his office. What's wrong? Alex pointed at Kat. My friend, I think she's bleeding to death out there. Hit the white button, Roy shouted. I'll call the paramedics. He ran back into his office. Alex slammed her fist on a button by the intercom and the doors swung open. She ran to Kat and lifted up the injured arm, applying pressure to the wounds. There were dozens of cuts on the arm, blood coursing from each one. With her spare hand, Alex slapped Kat's face, trying to snap her out of Krueger's control, to stop her dreaming. Kat, come on, wake up. Don't let him win, she implored. Roy returned from his office with armfuls of bandages and gauze, wrapping them around Kat's arm to staunch the blood loss. In less than a minute, paramedics ran into view, pushing a gurney. They took over from Roy and Alex, asking quick-fire questions to find out what had happened. I don't know, Alex admitted. She was waiting out here while I visited a friend. When I came back out, she looked like this. Is she on any medication, ma'am? Hypnosil, the dream suppressant, but her dosage must have ran out. The paramedics consulted with each other in terse sentences and comments, a flurry of facts and figures that bewildered Alex. Finally, she lost patience. Could you please tell me what's going on? It looks like your friend tried to commit suicide. She's lost a lot of blood, but we got to her in time, thanks to you. We've got to get her to the emergency room. They can treat her properly there. With that, the paramedics were running, pushing Kat away on the gurney. Alex and Roy were left behind, both of them smeared with Kat's blood. A pool of it had gathered underneath the bench. Roy was shaking his head. I don't understand. I looked out at least twice to make sure your friend was all right. She seemed to have dozed off, but I couldn't see any problem. Alex noticed a shape in the pool of blood. She reached into it and pulled out a long pair of scissors, heavy red drops falling from the blades. Those are mine, Roy said. How did they get out here? I always keep them in my office. His face paled. You don't think she used those to... Oh, my God. She wouldn't try to kill herself, Alex maintained. I know what it looks like, but Kat would not try to commit suicide. She's stronger than that. He must have got to her while she was asleep, cut her in a dream. She stopped, realizing Roy was staring at her. Sorry, just thinking out loud. You think somebody else did this to her? Yes, the same person that ripped the skin from Lloyd's face. But you saw him do that to himself. You said so, the orderly recalled. Alex was going to explain, but stopped herself. Sorry, the shock of seeing her like that, I guess it was too much. I'm sorry. Roy smiled at her. Are you sure you're okay? I could call your folks, get them to come and pick you up. No, that's okay. Thanks for all your help. I'm going to go see how my other friend is doing. Alex hurried in the same direction the paramedics had taken Kat, wishing she had a jacket to hide the blood soaking the front of her t-shirt. She checked her combat trousers. The bottle of Hypnostil was still in one of the pockets. I have to get some to Kat before the doctors sedate her. She saw a sign for the emergency room and quickened her pace. Peter had never been inside a house that was so pink. He and Chris were standing in the living room of Heather's home, still wet from their soaking at the multiplex, while she searched for towels and a change of clothes for herself. Every room in the house had pink walls, pink carpets, or pink furniture. The air was thick with the cloying smell of rose petals and cinnamon. It was like no man had ever set foot inside the place, at least no man from Peter's family. Where were the stinking socks, the pizza delivery boxes, the discarded cans from old six-packs of beer? Since his mother had died, Peter had been doing all the housework as part of his chores. His father said cleaning and tidying wasn't a man's work. When Peter questioned why he had to do it, his father had laughed bitterly. You're not a man, not a real one anyway. Housework's all you're good for. Fuck you too, Dad. Peter tried to put the old man out of his thoughts without success. I doubt he's even noticed I'm not even home yet. When there are no clean plates or the milk cartons are all empty, then he might figure it out, maybe. I could be dead and he wouldn't give a shit. Heather reappeared from upstairs, throwing towels to Peter and Chris. Dry your hair with these. I'd offer you some clothes to change into, but my mom burnt all Dad's clothes after he took off. Chris smiled. Happy families, huh? Not exactly. Is it okay if I call my folks? I left my cell at home this morning, and they'll be wondering where I am. Sure, it's down the hall, Heather said, pointing the way. Thanks. Chris left her and Peter alone in the living room. Nice place, Peter offered. You think? Heather looked around the pink room. It's always been a bit over the top for my taste, but Mom loves the space. Calls it her womb with a view. She spends most of the day in here watching our neighbors and drinking her own weight in gin. My dad prefers beer and plenty of it. 6-packs and Monday night football. Peter nodded. He used to make me watch every game. He was going to get a scholarship to college to play football, but he blew out his knee. And he was hoping you'd follow in his footsteps. Yeah, giving birth to a geek wasn't in the game plan. Heather sighed. I've been on the beauty pageant circuit since I was 4. Singing lessons, dancing lessons, elocution, deportment, costume fittings, beauty treatments, don't eat too much, don't bite your fingernails, don't cut your hair, on, forever and ever, amen. I always thought you liked all that attention. I hate it. I want to scream. Tell her to leave me alone. I don't want to be her. Don't want to relive her life. I want one of my own. Heather laughed. I've always envied people like you at school. Why? Peter asked. You can do what you want. You don't have to be on show 24/7. Don't have to always look your best. Heather stopped abruptly, one hand covering her mouth. Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like I was... Peter waved away her embarrassment. It's okay, really. Being a geek does have its advantages, I guess. But you don't get humiliated by assholes like Joey Johnston on a daily basis. You don't come home to a beating from your old man after his team is lost and he's had one six-pack too many. You don't hide in your bedroom where your only friends live on a computer screen. Chris's voice could be heard in the hallway, shouting on the phone. Heather pushed the door closed, shutting out what was being said. The grass is always greener, huh? Guess so, Peter agreed. He looked at his watch. It was 6 o'clock. You sure your mom won't be coming home tonight? I can guarantee it. Saturday night is party night. She expects me to be out making myself popular with all the right boys. You mean she, Heather grimaced. My mom's got a pretty warped set of values. Fuck yourself happy. That's how she described her philosophy of life to me once. I think I was 12 at the time and had found her in bed with some loser. No wonder Dad left when he did. I wish he'd taken me with him. Chris came back into the room, his face red and angry. He jerked a thumb back at the phone in the hall. Y'all catch any of that? Not the detail, only the volume, Heather said. Sorry. That's okay, she replied, resting a hand on Chris's shoulders. Parents? Yeah, it's my life, not his. We're so disappointed in you, Christopher. You're bringing shame and disgrace upon this family, Christopher. Come home now and we might find it in our hearts to forgive you, Christopher. Chris stared at the floor. Asshole. I've got a good mind to stay out all night. Then we'll see who's in charge. You're welcome to stay here, Heather offered, her hand still lingering on his shoulder. Peter shifted uncomfortably. Both of you are, Heather added. I'm not sure, Peter said. Stay, Chris urged. That way we can keep each other awake. Look out for each other. It's safer than being alone. You're probably right, Peter conceded. It'll be great, she enthused. We'll order pizza, watch some DVDs. Okay, Peter said, but no more scary movies. I've had enough blood and horror to last me a lifetime. Okay, this has been chapters 9 and 10 of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Suffer the Children, an original novel by David Bishop. I hope everybody's enjoying it so far. I just want to thank everybody again for subscribing. Please, if you can, take the time to hit that like button. Drop some comments. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to click the bell so you know when new chapters are going to drop. Let's spread the word out to Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, wherever. Let's let more fans out there know that there's a way they can experience these novels without having to break the bank to do so. Also, I wanted to let everybody know my daughter, who has some videos on my channel, she has painted some Freddy-centric pictures and some Jason-centric pictures. And during the music on these videos at the beginning and end, I'm going to start throwing a few of hers in, and I'm just real proud of her for taking the time, and she loves scary stuff, and it's just really awesome that she does. Again, subscribe if you haven't already. These videos come out daily. I put out chapters every day. After we finish this Nightmare on Elm Street book, I'll be moving on to a Jason X novel. Okay, I want to leave everybody with these words. Well, that's the story so far tonight. So the next time your air conditioner goes on the fritz, or your washing machine blows up, or your video recorder conks out, before you call the repairman, turn on all the lights, check all the closets and cupboards, look under all the beds, 'cause you never can tell. There just might be a gremlin in your house. Oh, wait a second. Wrong movie, wrong source material. My bad. I'm just going to go. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.
asleep again.